My wife cheated with my best friend, then stole $250, $0 in inheritance money, and now she's claiming our house, valued at $1.2 million, is hers because of a secret I never knew about. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, living through a nightmare I didn't see coming. The craziest part, it all started with what I thought was just a quiet, normal day. Little did I know that day would blow up my entire life. I had always trusted my wife. She was the kind of woman who dressed sharp, spoke sweetly, and seemed to have her life together, at least on the surface. We had been married for 7 years, and up until recently everything felt stable, predictable, comfortable. I thought I knew her inside out. Turns out I was completely wrong. It started with small things. Phone started ringing more often, especially late at night. She'd brush it off, say it was just her sister or a friend she'd been chatting with. She became secretive about her texts, hiding her phone whenever I walked into the room. At first, I thought maybe she was just being cautious. But the little lies piled up. Then came the odd hours she started working late, claiming it was for some new project at her job. She'd leave early, come back late, and had an excuse for everything. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I had a gut feeling something was off. One evening, I decided to check her phone. I know, bad move, but I was desperate for some honesty. I just wanted to see what she was hiding. I unlocked her phone while she was in the shower. That's when I saw it, a string of messages between her and Mark, my best friend since college. The messages weren't just friendly. They were flirtatious, suggestive, and downright disgusting. They talked about meeting up, about sex, about sneaking around. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. How long has this been going on? How could do this to me, to us? I was furious but also hurt. I felt betrayed at a level I can't even put into words. Mark, my best friend, the guy I trusted more than anyone, was sleeping with my wife. That's when I knew this wasn't just a fling or a moment of weakness. This was a full-blown affair. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My mind kept circling back to everything we built together, everything I thought we had. How could she do this? How could she lie so easily? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the evidence over and over. I felt sick, numb, angry. I didn't want to confront her immediately. I needed to think, to plan. But I knew I couldn't keep this secret forever. The next day I decided I needed answers. I needed to confront her face to face and hear what she had to say. When I did's reaction was, well, it was classic. She everything, called me paranoid, accused me of snooping. She spun a web of lies, claiming she was just talking to an old friend, that Mark was just helping her with work, that I was overreacting. She looked me straight in the eye and told me I was crazy for even suspecting her. But I wasn't crazy. I knew what I saw. I knew the truth, and that's when everything changed. The betrayal went deeper than I ever thought possible. It wasn't just about her cheating, there was more. I started digging into her phone, her emails, her social media. That's when I found out about the inheritance, about the $250, $0 she secretly stole from my family's estate. Turns out she'd been planning this for a while. She knew about the will I never knew existed, the one that left me everything after my parents died. She found out about it from Mark, I'm sure. And then she took a chunk of that money, money that was supposed to secure our future, and spent it like it was nothing. And it gets worse. I found out she's claiming our house, valued at $1.2 million, as hers because of some secret I never knew about. She's lying, manipulating, trying to turn everything against me. I feel like I've been hit by a freight train. My life, my trust, my stability, gone in a matter of weeks. I don't even recognize the woman I married anymore. She's a different person, bitchy, ruthless, and completely untruthful. I'm left here, trying to piece together what's real and what's not, wondering how I got here and what I'm supposed to do next. After I uncovered all that evidence, I felt like I was walking through a fog. My mind kept spinning. How did I not see this coming? How did she manage to hide so much from me for so long? It was like waking up from a nightmare, only to realize the nightmare was real and had been happening right under my nose. I remember sitting in our living room, staring at the wall, trying to process everything. The betrayal was so deep, so personal, that I couldn't even cry anymore. I just felt numb, like I'd been drained of all emotion. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I had a plan. I wanted her to admit everything, to see her break down or at least tell the truth for once. So I waited until she came home that evening. She looked annoyed, like I was bothering her, and I could tell she was trying to act normal. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I sat her down, kept my voice steady, and asked her outright about Mark. Her face twitched for a moment. She tried to deny it, but I had the proof. I threw the phone on the table and watched her reaction. Her eyes widened for a second, then she regained her composure. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, feigning innocence. "You're just overreacting. Mark is just a friend, and these messages mean nothing. You're paranoid as usual." That lie made my blood boil. I told her I knew everything about her affair, the stolen money, the house claim, everything. Her reaction was pure bullshit. She flipped her script quickly, saying I was jealous, that I was accusing her of things I had no proof of. She started crying, saying I was ruining everything we built, that she loved me and never meant to hurt me. But her tears didn't feel genuine. They felt forced, like she was trying to manipulate me again. That night I was a mess. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I kept replaying her words, her lies, her fake tears. I felt so stupid for trusting her all these years. How many times had I overlooked her little lies? I began questioning everything, our memories, our promises, our future. I wondered if I'd been blind, if I'd missed the signs. Deep down, I felt betrayed, not just by her but by Mark, who was supposed to be my friend. How could they do this to me? How could they betray me so openly? The next morning, I started digging into the money side of things. I found out she'd been siphoning off inheritance funds for months. I traced bank accounts, looked through transaction records, and saw the $250, $0 she'd secretly taken. She'd been living a double life, one where she pretended to be my devoted wife, and another where she was secretly planning her escape. I was furious. That money was supposed to secure my retirement, my children's future if we had any, and she just stole it like it was nothing. And the house, she was claiming it based on some secret will I never knew about, a will that apparently gave her full rights because of some shady legal maneuvering I had no idea existed. I couldn't believe she'd gone this far. She lied about everything, about her fidelity, about the money, about the house. It was like she thought she could get away with anything. I started to realize this wasn't just a fling or a moment of weakness. It was a full-blown scheme to take everything I had, everything I worked for. I felt a mixture of heartbreak, rage, and utter disbelief. How do you even process a betrayal of this magnitude? How do you look at someone you loved and see nothing but lies and greed? I was angry at her, yes, but also devastated. I loved her once. I thought she loved me. Now I didn't know what to believe. I spent the next few days trying to clear my head. I knew I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I had to come up with a plan, something to protect what was left of my life. I started talking to a lawyer about the inheritance, the house, and the legal implications of her claims. I also reached out to a private investigator to verify her story about the will and her claims of ownership. I needed to get to the bottom of this to understand just how deep her scheme went. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, pretending to be the victim, crying, begging for forgiveness. But I saw through her every time. In the back of my mind, I kept asking myself, what's next? Do I fight her legally? Do I just walk away? Do I try to save the marriage, or is it already beyond repair? The truth was, I didn't know anymore. All I knew was that I couldn't trust her, not with my heart, not with my money, not with my life. This betrayal had changed everything. I was hurt, angry, and feeling more alone than I ever had before. But I was also determined. I had to stand my ground, find out the truth, and protect what's mine. Because if I didn't, I'd lose everything: my money, my house, my dignity. And I wasn't about to let that happen without a fight. The days following the confrontation felt like walking through a minefield. Every time I looked at, I saw her differently. No longer the woman I married, but a stranger cloaked in lies and deception. She kept insisting it was all a misunderstanding, that Mark was just a friend helping her with some work project, that the money she took was just a loan, and that she never intended to hurt me. Honestly, her words just made me more furious. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she spin such a web of bullshit and expect me to buy it? I started to dig even deeper into her financials. I hired a private investigator, someone I found through a recommendation, to follow her around. I needed to see if she was meeting Mark again, if she was hiding more secrets. Turns out she was. The pie caught her sneaking into a hotel downtown with Mark late at night. They weren't just meeting for coffee or some innocent chat. They were clearly doing something more. That confirmed everything for me. This wasn't just an affair, it was a full-blown betrayal. And the worst part, she had the audacity to deny it when I confronted her again. Meanwhile, I was getting more details about the inheritance. I found out that my parents had left me a sizable estate, 500, zero in cash, property, and investments. However, had somehow found out about a secret will, one I never knew about. It was drafted years ago, supposedly giving her rights to the house and a significant portion of the estate. I learned that she'd been working on this behind my back for months, even before I found out about her affair. She had hired a lawyer, forged documents, and created a version of the will that she claimed made her the rightful owner of the house, valued at $1.2 million, and entitled her to the inheritance money. What really made my blood boil was the way she spun her lies. She told me she'd always been entitled to the house because of a secret will that my parents made, one I never knew about. She claimed that she'd been planning to take everything from the start, that she just needed the right moment. It was cold, calculated, and ruthless. I could see she was trying to set herself up as the victim, claiming I was controlling, accusing her of cheating, and now trying to steal what was rightfully mine. She told me she was entitled because she'd been there for me, that she deserved it more than anyone else. The emotional toll was overwhelming. I felt betrayed on every level, heart, mind, and wallet. I couldn't believe the woman I loved had been lying to me for so long, and that my best friend was complicit in this scheme. I felt stupid for trusting them, for believing that we had something real. The pain was sharp, and I couldn't escape it. I was angry at Mark. How could he betray me like that? And how could she lie so convincingly, manipulate me, and try to take everything I owned? It felt like my entire life was crumbling piece by piece. But amidst all this chaos, I knew I had to stay focused. I couldn't let her continue to spin her lies. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in estate law and fraud. We discussed the will, the forged documents, and the legal options I had. It was clear that had crossed a line. She was trying to steal from me, from my family's legacy. The lawyer told me I had grounds to contest the will, to challenge her claim to the house, and to recover the inheritance money. The process wouldn't be easy, and I knew she'd do everything to drag this out, spin more lies, and manipulate the system. But I was determined. I'd fight for what was mine. In the meantime, I also started documenting everything, screenshots of her messages, bank statements, the pie's reports, everything I could find. I wanted to build a solid case, not just for the legal battle, but also to keep myself grounded. Every new piece of evidence made me angrier, but it also strengthened my resolve. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I had to protect my future, my money, and my sanity. Honestly, the emotional was exhausting. One minute I was furious, ready to tear her apart. The next I was devastated, questioning everything I believed in. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. But deep down, I knew I couldn't dwell on the past. I had to focus on the present and what I needed to do to fix things, whether that meant fighting her in court, walking away, or something else entirely. The one thing I knew for sure was that I wouldn't let her take everything without a fight. I had worked too hard, loved too deeply, to let her destroy me now. The legal process began surprisingly quickly once I handed everything over to my lawyer. It turned out's forged will and her claims to the house were more fragile than she thought. Still, I knew it was going to be a brutal fight. She was already spinning her web of lies, claiming I was the one hiding things, that I was paranoid and controlling. Honestly, I'd had enough of her bullshit. I just wanted the truth out in the open, and I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions. In the meantime, I started to take control of my finances. I closed all joint accounts, transferred the inheritance money into a separate account I set up in my name, and hired a financial advisor to help me sort everything out. I wasn't going to let her drain me dry or manipulate her way into my assets. I also began gathering evidence to prove the forgery, copies of the original will, legal documents, and correspondence with her lawyer. Every step felt like a fight for my life, but I was determined to win. One day, came home and tried to act like everything was normal. She brought flowers, said she was sorry, and pleaded with me to forgive her. The bitch had the nerve to act like she was the victim, crying and saying she loved me, and only did all this because she was confused and wanted security. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her I knew about the affair, the stolen money, and the house claim. Her face twisted in anger and frustration, but I didn't back down. I told her that I would fight her every step of the way and that I'd make sure she paid for what she did. That's when she snapped. She started screaming, calling me a controlling asshole, a jealous idiot, and accused me of ruining her life. She said I was just jealous of Mark, that I'd always been insecure about losing her. I didn't even bother to argue. I just told her to get the hell out of my house and that I was done listening to her lies. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, and I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. I finally stood up for myself, and I was done playing nice. Over the next few weeks, the court case heated up. The lawyer tried every trick in the book, claiming I was abusive, that I was trying to cheat her out of her rights, and even that I was unstable. But I had the evidence, and I had witnesses ready to testify that she'd been planning this for months. My lawyer argued that the forged will was invalid, that had manipulated the legal system to her advantage, and that the inheritance was rightfully mine. We filed the paperwork and the judge scheduled a hearing. Meanwhile, true colors kept showing. She started showing up at our house unannounced, demanding to see the property and insisting she had rights to everything because of the secret will. She even tried to intimidate me, showing up with a new lawyer and some shady-looking people. I couldn't believe her audacity. I told her she had no legal claim, that she was trying to steal what wasn't hers, and that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I felt a surge of anger every time I saw her face, so bitchy, so manipulative, so full of lies. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and exhausted, but I also felt a growing sense of clarity. This was a battle I had to fight, not just for my money or my house, but for my dignity. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, not as my wife, not as the mother of my future children, if that was even possible anymore. Each day was a reminder that I'd loved someone who turned out to be so different from the person I thought I knew. Still, I knew I had to stay strong. I had to see this through to the end, no matter how painful it was. One night I sat alone in my living room, staring at the documents and evidence I'd collected. I felt a strange mixture of bitterness and hope. Bitterness because I'd lost so much. The trust, the security, the love. Hope because I knew I was fighting for what was right. I promised myself I wouldn't let her take everything I'd worked for. I'd rebuild, I'd move on, and I'd make sure she paid for her lies. I didn't know what the future held, but I was more determined than ever to get justice. No matter how much she lied, how much she manipulated, I was going to stand tall and fight for what's mine. The court hearing finally arrived, and I was a nervous wreck but also resolute. I sat in the courtroom, staring at across from me, her face a perfect mask of bitchy defiance. She looked confident, like she already knew. She had won, but I knew better. I had everything on my side, evidence, witnesses, and a lawyer who knew the law inside out. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was going to pull some last-minute stunt to save herself. That's just who she was, manipulative, cunning, and always trying to stay one step ahead. When our lawyer started presenting the case, I felt a flicker of hope. We laid out the forged will, the bank statements showing her siphoning off the inheritance, and the Pye's report confirming her meeting with Mark. Lawyer tried to argue that my evidence was circumstantial, that I was just jealous, that had every right to claim her share of the house because of the secret will. But I saw right through her bullshit. The judge was paying close attention, and I could tell she was irritated by blatant lies and manipulations. Things got intense when the judge asked directly about the forged documents. Her face faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered, spinning some story about how she was misled by her lawyer and that she only wanted what was fair. I couldn't believe her audacity. She was lying right there in court, trying to convince everyone that she was the victim. I felt my anger boiling over. I wanted to shout, to scream at her that she was a lying, manipulative bitch, but I kept my composure. I knew that showing emotion would only play into her hands. My lawyer called witnesses, my accountant, who about the stolen inheritance money, the pie, who confirmed her meetings with Mark, and a friend who saw her packing boxes and making plans to leave. The judge listened carefully, taking notes, and I could see her starting to see through's web of lies. The moment was tense. Everyone in the courtroom seemed to hold their breath. Then's lawyer tried to argue that I was trying to ruin her reputation, that I was just jealous and controlling. She even claimed I had a history of mental instability, trying to paint me as an unfit husband. That made my blood boil. I stood up, looked her straight in the eyes, and told the court that I had been betrayed and manipulated, but I was not crazy. I was just a man who loved his wife and trusted her only. To find out she'd been lying to my face for years. I said I wanted justice, not just for the money and the house, but for the years of pain she'd caused me. The judge finally called a recess after hours of testimony and arguments. I felt exhausted but relieved. I knew we'd made a strong case and I could see confidence starting to crack. I kept thinking about everything I'd lost: trust, love, security, and what I still had to fight for. I promised myself I wouldn't give up, no matter how long it took. I would get justice and I would rebuild my life. When court resumed, the judge announced her decision. She ruled that the forged will was invalid, that had no legal claim to the house or the inheritance, and that the estate was rightfully mine. The courtroom erupted in quiet relief, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. His face twisted in anger and frustration, but she knew she'd lost. She tried to protest, to spin some last-minute lie, but the judge cut her off. It was over. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. The fight was finally done, but the damage she'd done to my life was permanent. I knew I'd never trust her again, and I had to figure out what came next. But at least now I was the one in control. I'd fought for what was mine, and I'd won. That night I sat alone in my house, reflecting on everything: the lies, the betrayal, the pain, and the strength it took to get through it. I realized I'd learned a lot about trust, about who people really are, and about the importance of protecting yourself. I knew I'd never let anyone manipulate me like that again, and I'd rebuild my life from the ground up. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that sometimes you have to fight for yourself, no matter how much it hurts. After the court's decision, a strange silence settled over me. For the first time in months, I felt a kind of peace, an exhaustion mixed with relief. Was gone from my house for good, her lies exposed, her plan dismantled. I could finally breathe again, but the scars of everything still lingered. I knew I'd never look at trust the same way, and I'd carry the weight of this betrayal with me forever. Still, I was grateful it was over, at least the legal fight. Now I had to figure out how to move forward. I spent the following weeks cleaning out the house, throwing away her things and reclaiming my space. It was painful, seeing the empty rooms where her presence once filled the air, but I knew I had to do it. I couldn't let her betrayal define me, not anymore. I also started therapy, something I'd avoided for years but now saw as necessary. I needed to process all the pain, anger, and confusion. It wasn't easy. Some days I felt like giving up, like I was broken beyond repair. But I kept going, reminding myself that I deserved better, that I could rebuild. Financially, I was fortunate. The court ruling ensured that I kept the inheritance and the house, and I was able to secure my future. I hired a financial advisor to help me manage everything smartly, so I wouldn't fall into the same trap again. I also reached out to some friends, people I trusted, and slowly started rebuilding my support network. I realized I'd been so focused on her, on fighting her lies, that I'd neglected my own well-being. That was a hard lesson, but one I needed to learn. I heard through some mutual contacts that she'd moved out of the city, trying to start fresh somewhere new. Honestly, I didn't care where she was or what she was doing. I knew she'd never change, not really. That kind of person doesn't. Her bitchiness, her manipulations, they were who she was. I just hoped she'd find whatever she was looking for, even if it meant destroying others along the way. Looking back, I see how much I underestimated her. I always thought I knew her, but she was a master at hiding her true nature. She lied, cheated, stole everything I thought she was. She was just a person who wanted to control, to take whatever she could get, no matter the cost. And I was a fool for trusting her for so long. Now I'm rebuilding my life, slowly, carefully. I've learned to recognize the signs of manipulation, to trust my instincts, and to value myself more than ever. I'll never forget what she did, but I refuse to let it define me. I'm stronger now, more cautious and more aware. I know the pain of betrayal, but I also know that healing is possible. Sometimes you have to go through hell to come out the other side stronger and wiser. So here's what I want to say to anyone reading this. Trust your gut. Watch the people around you. And if you find yourself betrayed like I was, don't give up. Fight for your dignity, your future, your peace. Because at the end of the day, no one's going to do that for you but yourself. And if I've learned anything, it's that even in the darkest moments, there's a way back to the light. Sometimes you just have to be willing to fight for it.